Do not believe a single thought that tells you there is such a thing as a delay. You have been profoundly misled by the testimony of the senses. What you are condemning as a painful postponement, what you are begging to be released from, is in truth the most sacred activity of the universe. It is not delay, it is divine preparation. You are standing at the very edge of a great inner transition, yet you are interpreting this necessary, holy unfolding as a failure of God to keep time. This moment is demanding that you look past the appearance, that you relinquish the human schedule to perceive the spiritual process. Here, you will discover why every seeming obstacle is actually an orchestration, why every period of waiting is a cocoon of invisible development. You will come to see that your present circumstance is the perfect, purposeful preparation for what is already fully formed in the spiritual realm, pressing for its emergence in your experience. If this truth finds a home within you, if it begins to silence the fear, then join this sacred communion of awakening. Subscribe to this channel as an act of commitment to this inward journey. And in the comments below, mark your presence with the number 777, symbolizing the complete perfection of the spiritual process now at work. Let us move deeper into this first and most critical recognition, for it is the foundation upon which your entire understanding will be rebuilt. The moment you label an experience as a delay, you have, in that instant, placed yourself under the absolute authority of the clock and the calendar. You have bowed to a temporal God, a relentless taskmaster of minutes and hours that knows nothing of spiritual gestation. You have agreed to a conspiracy of appearances, believing that because a thing is not visible to the eyes or tangible to the hands at this appointed hour, it has failed to arrive. But this is the great deception of the senses, to convince you that what is unseen is unreal, and what is unreal is a denial of promise. Consider the farmer who, having planted a seed, returns to the field the next morning expecting to see the stalk in full bloom. Finding only undisturbed soil, he declares the seed faulty, the soil barren, the rain withheld. He calls it a failure, a delay. But is the seed idle? Is the universe within that dark, silent chamber of earth inactive? A frenzy of holy operation is underway. The seed is surrendering its old form, breaking apart in a sacred self-sacrifice so that a new and greater expression can push upward toward the light. The delay is the entirety of the process. It is not an interruption of growth. It is growth itself. To demand the harvest before the rooting is to invoke chaos and guarantee nothing but disappointment. Now translate this to the soil of your own life. You have planted a seed of desire for a greater harmony, for healing, for supply, for companionship, for purpose. You have, in a moment of inner sincerity, turned within and felt the stirring of that seed. And then you have set your mental watch. You have created an expectation, not of the natural unfolding, but of a theatrical appearance on the stage of your human life. When the actor does not enter on cue, you panic. The curtain was to rise at noon, and it is now past 3. You conclude the play is canceled. You sink into despair, frustration, or worse, resentment toward the very ground of your own being. But what if, during this so-called delay, an entire inner architecture is being constructed to support the weight of the manifestation when it appears? You wish for a new level of responsibility, but your patience is being fortified to bear it. You pray for a healing of a relationship, but your own heart is being softened and cleansed of ancient grievances to make that relationship possible. You seek abundant supply, but your consciousness is being weaned from the belief in lack and separation, learning to rest in the invisible flow. The preparation is not happening to you, it is happening within you at the core of your identity. The universe is not withholding your good, it is withholding you from your good until you are spiritually congruent with it. Until receiving it does not shatter you, but fulfills you. This illusion of delay is always a matter of perspective, of standing in the limited vantage point of the human scene and judging the infinite activity of spirit by its intermediate stages. It is like watching a sculptor and seeing only the chips of marble falling away, declaring he is destroying the stone. You do not see the form emerging in his mind, guiding his hand. Your life is that marble, and the divine artisan is at work. Every blow of the chisel, every moment that does not look like the finished statue, feels like a loss, a setback, but it is the precise and purposeful removal of what does not belong, of the hard, resistant mentalities that obscure your true likeness. Therefore, when the feeling of delay descends upon you, that heaviness that whispers, "Too late," or "Never," recognize it for what it is, a temptation to judge by appearances. It is a call to shift your gaze from the empty stage to the vibrant, creative activity backstage. Silence the human calculation. Ask not, "When will it come?" That question enslaves you to time. Instead, turn inward and affirm, "I am in the midst of the perfect divine process. I am being prepared, and that which is for me is being prepared in me." This is not passive waiting, it is active, vigilant yielding to a wisdom that knows the exact timing required for integration and wholeness. The anxiety of delay melts not by the arrival of the event, but the moment you perceive the sacredness of the preparation. You stop watching the clock and begin to witness the unfoldment. And in that shift of attention, you find the peace that has been there all along, orchestrating every detail from within the silence. This understanding dismantles the illusion, revealing not an empty void where nothing happens, but a vibrant, intelligent field of sacred activity. Divine preparation is the unseen verb of the universe, the constant, holy motion that the human sense, impatient and literal, misinterprets as a pause. It is the work happening behind the sealed door, the restructuring within the cocoon, the fermentation within the vat. To call it delay is to stand outside the bakery, smelling the bread, and to curse the oven for being hot, not realizing that the heat itself is the necessary agent of transformation from raw dough to nourishing substance. Think of the master violinist. You hear the flawless concerto, the seamless flow of notes, that seems to emerge as a single, perfect breath of beauty. What you do not see are the 10,000 hours of solitary, often discordant preparation. The screeching of the bow as a child, the fumbling over scales, the aching muscles, the repeated failures to find the pitch. If you were to listen only to those hours, you would hear no music, only noise and struggle. You would declare the musician untalented, the endeavor a waste. Yet every one of those seemingly fruitless moments was a divine preparation. Each was a precise, intentional stroke sculpting the neural pathways, refining the touch, building the endurance, and instilling the discipline that would later allow the music to pour forth as if by second nature. The music was always present in potential, but the instrument, the human capacity to express it, had to be made ready. Now bring this into the chamber of your own heart. You have prayed for peace, yet find yourself in a storm of turmoil. You have asked for strength and are presented with a burden that feels crushing. The human view screams, "This is the opposite of what I asked for." Where is the peace? Where is the strength? This is a denial, but the spiritual reality is that the peace you seek is not the absence of storm, but a profound calm that can abide within it. That calm must be built. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, is not giving you a lecture on peace. It is giving you the gymnasium in which your spiritual muscles of peace are forged. The turmoil is not the denial of your prayer. It is the raw material, the resistance against which your inner peace learns to assert its own silent authority. Or consider the deep longing for a purposeful work, a vocation that feels like a calling. The mind imagines its sudden appearancy, the phone call, the offer, the open door. When that does not materialize on schedule, discouragement sets in. But during this period, what is happening? Perhaps you are being stripped of a false identity tied to a former role. Maybe you are being forced to develop a skill you otherwise would have neglected. You might be placed in a humble, seemingly irrelevant position where you learn the grace of service without glory. These are not random obstacles. They are the meticulous, sometimes painful preparations of the soul, sanding down the rough edges of ego, aligning your desires with a deeper rhythm, so that when the door does open, you do not merely step into a job, you step into a manifestation of your own matured capacity. You are being fitted for the garment, and the fitting room is often a cramped and poorly lit place. This divine preparation is always an inside-out process. The world believes in acquiring, in adding something from the outside to an incomplete self. Spirit works by revelation, by removing the barriers within that hide the already complete spiritual identity. So the waiting is the active dissolution of the old mindset. It is the gentle, persistent erosion of the belief that you are a separate self, laboring under your own power at the mercy of external events. As this false foundation cracks, something new can emerge, not as an imported gift, but as the natural shining forth of what has always been true about you. Therefore, when you find yourself in what the world calls a holding pattern, challenge yourself to perceive the activity. Do not look for the thing itself. Look for the subtle signs of the preparation, the increased patience, the sudden insight, the unexpected resource, the deep, wordless knowing that settles over you despite the outer circumstances. These are the indicators that the work is proceeding perfectly. Your very frustration is the friction of transformation. Your surrender to the process is not defeat. It is the alignment that allows the divine current to do its perfect work without the interference of your mental schedule. You are not waiting, guys, for God. You are waiting in God, and in that conscious abiding, you begin to perceive the sacred hum of the preparation itself, which is the only evidence you will ever need that the fulfillment is not only coming, it is already here in its formative state, shaping you to receive it. This realization allows us to perceive the true direction of all spiritual activity. The universe does not labor to assemble your good piece by piece in the external, like a worker constructing a house from a pile of lumber. That is the human, linear view, the source of our anxiety as we watch for each brick to appear. No. The spiritual universe operates from the finished, complete, and perfect formlessness of pure idea, pressing it into the form of your experience, your answered prayer, your healing, your harmony. It exists now, whole and intact, in the invisible realm of cause. What you are interpreting as delay is simply the journey of that perfect idea, from the formless into the form, from the cause into the effect, moving through the medium of your own consciousness as it is being prepared to bear witness to it. Consider the architect. Before a single foundation is dug, before one beam is lifted, the entire structure exists in its completeness. It lives as a vision, a detailed blueprint, a perfect idea in the mind of the Creator. Every electrical conduit, every dimension of every room, the flow of space and light, it is all present, fully formed in the formless realm of conception. The construction site is not where the building is created, it is where it is revealed. The noisy, messy, often slow, seeming work of contractors and machinery is not the creation of the idea, but the meticulous translation of that idea into tangible substance. To stand amidst the mud and rebar and complain that this does not look like the beautiful building in the rendering is to misunderstand the process. The perfect idea is governing every single step. Now transpose this to your own life. The healing you seek, for instance, is not something that needs to be manufactured from scratch. It is a state of wholeness, a spiritual fact that already is. In the formless realm of truth, there is no condition to be healed. There is only perfection. The movement into form is the discarding of the false evidence of the senses, the collapsing of the mental scaffolding that has supported the belief in disease. The process is not God slowly building health within a sick body. It is the sick body which is itself only a solidified thought, yielding to the already present reality of health that is now dawning in your understanding. The fever breaks, the strength returns, not because something new was added, but because the inner recognition of wholeness has finally dissolved the outer appearance of fragmentation. You desire a harmonious relationship. The human mind sets about listing attributes, planning meetings, striving to build connection through force of personality. It operates from lack, seeking to cobble together a companionship from the external world. But the spiritual universe knows no lack. The harmony, the companionship, the love you seek is already a complete, formless spiritual reality. It is a singular, unified idea. Your preparation is the alignment of your own consciousness to that idea, releasing grievances, dissolving expectations of separation, quieting the loneliness that shouts so loudly it cannot hear the silent, present communion of spirit. When you are sufficiently attuned, this formless idea will inevitably take form. It may appear as a healed relationship with someone already present, or as the entrance of a new person. But that person is not the source of the harmony. They are the form the harmony has taken, the mirror reflecting back to you the unity you have discovered within yourself. This is why striving from the outside in always fails and exhausts. It is an attempt to build the house, starting with the roof, to paint the masterpiece by beginning with the frame. It is laboring under the weight of the world. But to work from the inside out is to labor in the light yoke of spirit. You rest in the assurance of the perfect, formless idea. You become still and know. You consent to the preparation of your own mind, the clearing of the channel. You do not beg for the manifestation. You acknowledge the spiritual fact behind the appearance. And as you do, you are not pulling the idea down to earth, but rather you are allowing your earthly awareness to rise to meet it. The manifestation is not constructed, it is uncovered. It was never not there. You are simply removing, through the grace of this preparation, the veil of belief that said it was absent. The delay was the time it took for your sight to adjust from the darkness of human judgment to the light of spiritual knowing, where what you sought is seen to have been finished from the foundation of the world. And so we come to see your present condition not as a prison of lack, but as the very chamber of this sacred transformation. That which you resent, that circumstance you are praying to escape, is not a sign of divine neglect. It is the necessary cocoon. It is the dark, silent, and confining space where the metamorphosis from a truth, obscured consciousness to a truth, revealed consciousness is forced to occur. The caterpillar does not merely nap and awaken with wings. It dissolves into a formless soup, a state that, to its former caterpillar understanding, would be the very definition of annihilation and failure. Yet within that seeming chaos, the imaginal cells, the blueprint of the butterfly that was always present but latent, begin their work, assembling a new and more glorious organism from the essence of the old. To resist the cocoon is to resist the wings. You feel confined by financial limitation, as if bound by invisible threads. The mind screams for immediate release, for a sudden windfall that will cut the bonds and let you soar. But what if this constriction is the very pressure required to reform your understanding of what supply is? The cocoon of limitation forces you out of habitual thinking, out of the lazy belief that abundance is a quantity of currency. It pushes you to discover supply as a spiritual quality, as ingenuity, as inner resourcefulness, as a flow of ideas, as the recognition of unexpected provision in a friend's kindness or an overlooked opportunity. It is dissolving your caterpillar like dependence on the leaf of a single income, a single source, so that the winged consciousness of omnipresent spiritual substance can form within you. The limitation is not withholding your good. It is the intense, focused condition designed to produce a consciousness that can carry true, limitless abundance without being destroyed by it. Consider a period of profound loneliness, an ache of isolation that feels like a void. The human impulse is to flee this discomfort, to numb it with noise or settle for any company to fill the silence. But what if this loneliness is the cocoon? It is the quiet so absolute that you are forced to stop seeking your reflection in the eyes of another and are driven inward to confront the companionship of your own being. It is the dissolution of the noisy, social caterpillar, so that the silent, self-sufficient butterfly of spiritual identity can develop. In that cocoon, you are not being prepared for just any relationship. You are being prepared for a relationship that begins in wholeness, not lack. You are learning the language of the inner dialogue with the divine, so that when another speaks to you, you will recognize the same voice. To break out of this cocoon prematurely is to emerge with the wet, crumpled wings of dependency, unable to fly in the free air of unconditional love. Even physical pain or illness can be such a cocoon, as shocking as that may sound to the senses. It is a severe and focused confinement that utterly shatters the belief in the body as a self-governing mortal entity. In its relentless grip, all the usual distractions and trivial pursuits lose their meaning. It forces a reckoning. It demands the question, what am I if I am not this suffering vessel? This is not a divine punishment, but a severe mercy. It is the dissolution of a false identity. Within this painful dark, the imaginal cells of a spiritual understanding, the truth of your identity as untouched, harmonious, and eternal consciousness begin their quiet, persistent work. The healing that emerges is not merely a repaired body, but a liberated consciousness that has glimpsed its own nature apart from form, often leaving one with a peace and clarity that was unimaginable in the health of the former life. Therefore, look upon your cocoon with new eyes. Do not curse its walls. It is the perfect environment engineered by infinite intelligence for the specific transformation you require. The frustration you feel is the friction of the old form breaking down. The impatience is the memory of caterpillar life. The surrender is not to the confinement, but to the process occurring within it. Your only work is to consent to the dissolution, to trust the intelligence of the imaginal blueprint at work in the midst of what seems like ruin. Stop straining against the silken threads. They are there to hold you in place while the holy work is done. Be still. Listen. The very substance of your being is being reorganized according to a pattern of freedom you cannot yet see. The cocoon is not your tomb. It is the womb of your winged self, and its confines are the precise measure of love, ensuring you do not emerge a moment before you are ready to truly fly. This consent to the cocoon, this stilling of the struggle, is the critical pivot. It is the act of relinquishing the human schedule to perceive the spiritual process. Your personal timetable is a fiction born of memory and fear, memory of how long things have taken in the past, and fear that the future may not hold your good. It is a calendar etched in sand, blown by the winds of circumstance. The spiritual process, however, follows a rhythm as precise and unhurried as the turning of seasons or the movement of tides, governed by the law of unfoldment, not the tyranny of the clock. To impose your schedule upon it is like a child having planted an acorn, returning each hour with a shovel to dig it up and check on the oak tree. You are not assisting the growth, you are ensuring its failure. Your anxiety becomes a barrier to the very process you wish to hurry. Think of the master potter at the wheel. The clay must be centered. This is a non-negotiable foundational step. From the outside, it looks like simple spinning, no vase, no bowl is being shaped yet. An impatient observer might cry, "Get on with it. Start making the pot." But the potter knows that if the clay is not perfectly centered, every subsequent step will be flawed, the walls will be uneven, the form will wobble, and the final piece may collapse upon itself in the fire. The centering is the process. Your life is that clay. The periods where nothing seems to be happening, where no new shape is emerging, are not empty. They are the profound and necessary centering. The universe is applying the gentle, firm pressure of experience to bring you into perfect spiritual axis, so that when the shaping begins, when the relationships, the opportunities, the new directions are formed, they will be symmetrical, strong, and able to withstand the firing of outer world pressures. To demand the shaping before the centering is to ask for a flawed vessel. You have prayed for a decision to be made, for a pathway to open. The mind creates a deadline. I must know by Friday. Friday comes, and the way is not clear. Panic sets in. You interpret the silence as a denial and are tempted to force a choice from a place of confusion. But what if the silence is the centering? What if, in this apparent stillness, the scattered fragments of your desires, your fears, your options are being brought into a single, coherent point of balance? The mind in its haste sees only indecision. The spiritual process is delivering you from the tyranny of choice to the clarity of inner knowing. It is dissolving the noise of should and must and the opinions of others, so that when the impulse to move does arise, it comes not from frantic calculation, but from a deep, centered peace. That peace is the indicator that the centering is complete, and the shaping can now proceed with grace and power. Or consider a time of intense emotional upheaval, perhaps a betrayal or a loss. The human schedule demands immediate resolution, a quick fix, a fast forward through the grief to a state of numb normalcy. We are taught to get over it, according to a tidy timeline. But the spiritual process cannot be rushed. Grief, in its sacred depth, is not a problem to be solved. It is a centering. It is the great, slow wheel of experience, bringing your entire being to a new axis around a new truth. Every tear is an adjustment of the clay. To short circuit this with distraction or denial is to emerge off-center, your future emotional life forever wobbly and prone to collapse. To relinquish the schedule is to sit in the holy fire of feeling, to allow it to do its complete work of burning away illusion and tempering the soul until you find yourself centered in a resilience and compassion that could have been formed no other way. This is the great shift, moving from being a frantic timekeeper to a reverent witness. You put down the stopwatch and pick up the lamp of awareness. Instead of asking, when? You begin to ask, what is being accomplished here? What quality is being developed? What false belief is being dissolved? You look for the evidence of the centering, not the finished pot. You notice the increase in patience, the flicker of unexpected peace amid chaos, the quiet intuition that whispers direction. These are the signs the process is alive and moving. Your surrender to its rhythm is not passivity. It is the most powerful form of cooperation. It is aligning your will with the divine will, your sense of timing with eternal timing. In that alignment, a miracle occurs. The anxiety that once screamed about delay falls silent. And in that silence, you can finally hear the whirring of the wheel, the sound of the perfect centering, and know, with a certainty beyond all human proof, that the shaping is now not only possible, but inevitable. This alignment, this conscious cooperation with the unseen process, reveals the final and most dynamic secret. Acceptance of the process is not a passive resignation. It is the very catalyst that accelerates the manifestation. It removes the friction of your resistance, allowing the spiritual current to flow unimpeded. Think of a river. You stand in the middle, facing upstream, bracing your feet against the rock of your own willful timetable, straining with all your might to push the river forward, to make it flow faster toward the sea. Your effort is not only useless, it exhausts you and creates turbulent chaos around you. The river needs no assistance. It is flowing perfectly according to its own nature and the pull of the ocean. Acceleration occurs the moment you stop pushing, turn around, and allow yourself to be carried by the current. Your acceptance is the turning around. It is aligning your posture with the direction of the flow, and in that alignment, you move with the full, silent power of the river itself. The journey to the sea happens not by your effort, but by your consent to be moved. Consider a simple seed in the soil. Does it accelerate its growth by straining, by pushing upward with frantic, anxious force? No. Its power is in its yielding. It accepts the darkness, the moisture, the conditions. It surrenders to the intelligence within it that knows exactly how to break its shell, send roots downward, and a shoot upward. Its entire being is an acceptance of the process, and that acceptance is the engine of its growth. Any interference, digging it up, Overwatering it in panic, exposing it prematurely, only stunts it. Your soul is that seed. Your mental and emotional struggle against the conditions of your life is the digging up, the frantic overwatering. The moment you cease that interference and instead consciously accept, I am in the perfect medium for my growth, you align with the innate intelligence of your own being. The energy previously wasted in resistance is now freed to fuel the authentic, organic unfoldment. The sprout breaks ground not because you pulled it, but because you finally stopped holding it back. You are in a financial tightness, praying for supply. The human mind, in its fear, contracts. It hoards, it worries, it calculates from a standpoint of lack. This very contraction is a form of resistance, like squeezing the seed in your fist. It says to the universe, there is not enough. And your experience mirrors the tightened, fearful state. But the moment you genuinely accept the process, not the limitation, but the divine preparation occurring within it, a subtle relaxation occurs. You stop mentally fighting the circumstance. In that relaxation, you open. You may find yourself inspired to take a wise, perhaps previously overlooked action. You may notice an opportunity that fear had blinded you to. A forgotten resource may come to mind. This is not magic. It is the natural result of the seed being allowed to expand in the soil. Your acceptance has shifted your consciousness from the vibration of lack to the vibration of readiness. And the law of the universe is that like attracts like. The manifestation accelerates because you are no longer mentally and emotionally anchored in the condition you wish to leave behind, or take a relationship that feels strained or distant. The usual approach is to strive to manipulate conversations, to try to force closeness or resolutions on a schedule. This striving is the pushing against the river. It often creates more distance, as it comes from a place of lack and control. But to accept the process is to release the other person from your emotional timeline. It is to center yourself in the wholeness of your own being as the potter centers the clay. This does not mean condoning hurtful behavior. It means releasing the anxious need for the other to change now. In that profound release, a transformation occurs within you. The tension dissipates. You become a presence of peace rather than a source of pressure. And it is into that peaceful, accepting space that healing can flow. The other person, freed from the force of your expectations, often finds their own capacity to soften and move. The reconciliation, when it comes, is organic and true, accelerated by the cessation of the war. Therefore, understand this acceleration as a spiritual law, not a reward for good behavior. It is the natural consequence of harmony. When your conscious mind ceases its rebellion against the divine schedule and enters into a conscious union with the spiritual process, you are no longer working against the current, you are it. The delays imposed by your own resistance fall away. The manifestation is not pushed from the future into the present. It is revealed from the formless into the form as your consciousness, now perfected in acceptance, becomes the clear lens through which it can be seen. You stop waiting for the light and realize you have become transparent to it. And in that transparency, all that ever seemed delayed shines forth as now and here and complete.